this video in the NFL, I'm going to discuss running back situations. Recording this before going into week 8. And probably another one of the common questions I get on Twitter is advice on running backs and what do I think the snap counts are going to be and who's going to get a bulk of the carries, who has PPR value, and all that kind of stuff. And it's something that I've been doing pretty well with in projecting over the last couple of weeks. The Jaya situation certainly comes to mind that a lot of people have been bringing up to me. So, in any case, there are a lot of teams with interesting running back situations going on right now. So, I'm just going to dive into each team, not all 32 teams, but the teams that actually have situations worth diving into. And so, to try and help people out a little bit as far as what we can expect maybe in some cases for week 8 and in some cases moving forward and in some cases what we might be able to expect in a couple of weeks maybe when somebody returns. So I'm just going to kind of go through each division here, and starting in the AFC East, and ironically, there are a lot of teams in the AFC East to go through, and actually all of them. So let's just start here on the left. The Buffalo Bills. So right now, LaShawn McCoy, questionable, probably not going to play in week 8. And quite frankly, this was one that I definitely was very vocal about on Twitter, and I said, I have no idea what the Jets are thinking here. It is a hamstring. He can re-aggravate it. I don't understand what the point is if we're at mid-season right now against the Dolphins, and you're going to need McCoy obviously the rest of the year and potentially the playoffs if the Bills get back there, which they're in a very good chance. They're not they're not undefeated, but they're in a pretty good position to catch one of the wild card spots. And that was just really strange to me because Josina Anderson, I think it was, of ESPN, had reported that he wasn't going to play, and then all of a sudden he was going to be a game time decision, and they pushed him to play and then re-aggravated it. That just made no sense to me. So it sounds like he's not going to play this weekend, which would certainly make the most sense. If that is the case, I do expect Mike Gillespie not only to just be the number one running back here for this week. I expect him to be really the workhorse back. Doesn't mean he's going to play 100% of snaps by any means, but Reggie Bush will get in there a little bit, I'm sure, on some pass downs and sprinkle him in there here and there. But we've seen Rex Ryan. Sometimes the vultured LaShawn McCoy before in the red zone. We're not going to see that with Gillespie. I think Gillespie is going to be the workhorse guy here moving forward until LaShawn McCoy is active and healthy. If Rex Ryan decides to play LaShawn McCoy in week 8, it just unfortunately, I would just avoid McCoy and Gillespie altogether just because it's such an unknown situation. Just doesn't make much sense to me. Not a doctor. I don't know exactly what McCoy's health status is, but when you're dealing with a hamstring, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me when he was that bad to begin with. So that's it for the Patriots. And they play at the Patriots this week, and it's not the greatest matchup in the world, anyways. As 6.5 point underdogs on the road, so this isn't like a huge deal, but there is going to be a little bit of value with Gillespie, I think, obviously, if McCoy is out. Let's move on to the Dolphins. There's nothing really to update here with the Dolphins other than just obviously everybody knows Arian Foster is retired. That was kind of an interesting situation just because Foster was used 87% of the snaps week 1. Unfortunately, got injured again and just couldn't quite get back up to 100% and called it quits. So best of luck to him in the future. But after that, I remember for the people that have said, thanks for Ajayi in the past, in the last few weeks, you're welcome. This is, for people that are watching this have no idea what I'm talking about. In week 3, I was very vocal that the Dolphins should be going with Jay Ajayi against the Cleveland Browns, and there was insane value there. And I really wasn't that worried about it, even though Gay said they were going to rotate some running backs, and Gay's elected to rotate running backs, and I looked like a fool. And it just didn't make any sense to me. And I do not understand. Like, obviously, if you've got a dark horse running back, or when I say dark horse, I should say a workhorse running back, a guy that's going to be working first and second down, but then you want to bring in a third down back that's better in pass protection, better pass catcher, better in screens, things of that nature. It makes sense to use a 2 running back system where it's like a 60-40 split. If somebody's a little bit better between the tackles for first and second down, all those kinds of things, better running out of the I formation, whatever it might be. That makes sense. But when you are just rotating based on series between 3 or 4 different backs, does not allow running backs to get into any kind of a game flow. And also, we have to remember, football games are just, in a single individual football game is a very limited sample size as it is. when you get maybe 3 to 4 carries or 4 to 6 carries, maybe if you're getting maybe 2 to 3 series a game or something like that, um, that is I think how can there are so many variables to going into a successful running play. I don't know how coaches can evaluate players in game situations on such a limited amount of work. It makes no sense to me. To me, it would make a lot more sense to just go one guy, maybe 1 or 2 guys, and just play them the whole game, and so you can get a full uh, even if he's a bit of a younger player, or even if he may not have the highest amount of talent, put him in there for the full game and see what you really have in this person, because they're just, like I said, you don't know what's going to be happening. What's the down and distance? What's the defense doing? How is your offensive line doing in blocking? There's just so many different variables that go into every single play that it just didn't make much sense to me. But then apparently something woke up with the coaching staff, and now they decided to play a majority of the snaps, and he consequently ran for 200 yards. I was definitely not expecting that, but he ran for 200 plus yards against the Steelers, and then did so last week against the Buffalo Bills. And you should absolutely continue to use Ajayi. Obviously, we not expect 200 plus yards again, but he is a very good running back, and I felt that with Ajayi, watched him a lot at Boise State. And, a lot of the stuff that I had seen with him early on, the offensive line was not blocking well for him. The Dolphins' run blocking has just not been very good, and it was particularly not good when Ajayi was in the game, from what I had seen. And so, in the limited work that he had. So this doesn't, it shocks me that he ran for 200 yards in back-to-back games, but it does not shock me to see him running well right now, and he should certainly be the guy for the Dolphins right now moving forward. So that's it for that. New England Patriots. Dion Lewis isn't back yet, but he is practicing again, and I think the Patriots have 3 weeks now to activate him from the PUP. So I think we will probably see that, coming forward in the next couple of weeks. So when this does happen, how is this going to affect the other running backs? I don't think it affects LeGarrette Blount very much at all. I think it affects James White, though, certainly, because they're a little bit more of the PPR type backs. Dion Lewis will line up as a receiver more than James White, so Lewis is a little bit more of a receiver and a little bit better in the PPR, or in full PPR formats like DraftKings. There's that to look at. So James White wasn't quite as reliant on that, but nevertheless, when Tom Brady came back, James White, not surprisingly, his value went up. And obviously, we know how good Dion Lewis was last year with Brady at the helm until Dion Lewis got hurt. So again, I think this will hurt James White. Doesn't really affect LeGarrette Blount, and Dion Lewis will, I don't know if he'll go back to being as the Dion Lewis of last year. We'll see how good he is coming off, the significant injury. But that's kind of how I think that'll play out as far as the running back situation goes. And the Jets, this is important. So this was one that I felt like a lot of things that have been written at other platforms, a lot of people have been wrong on constantly throughout the year, and I don't necessarily understand why. So everybody started out the year, I won't say everybody, that's not the right way. A lot of people have said that Matt Forte, he's getting up there in age, and he's not going to be used as like a workhorse running back. He's not going to get a huge volume of carries. And I didn't really understand that why. This isn't like Matt Forte is like in his mid-30s. He's not that old. So it's and he's been very productive when he's had a decent line. And the last couple of years in Chicago, the line was not very good in Chicago. In fact, it was one of the worst offensive lines. So I didn't really understand the reason, the kind of the logic why people were saying this. He was going to a new team, and a lot of people had high hopes for Bilal Powell, which I really wasn't quite 100% sure about, and why that was. It just seemed like a lot of theories rather than substance. I guess I'll just put it that way. And so now what we've seen this year is Forte has gotten high volume when the Jets are playing from ahead or in very close games. When the Jets fall behind, 2 scores early, or they're just having to play catch up from behind, that's when you're seeing Bilal Powell and more on pass downs. That's the one thing I will say that Forte's value has gone down a little bit with the Jets, is he's not catching as many passes as he did with the Chicago Bears. So maybe a slight decrease there. But Forte is getting a great amount of work with the Jets, as long as they are in competitive games. And they do play the Cleveland Browns this week. And, obviously I think, I don't expect the Jets to be blown out or anything like that. I'm actually wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland won this game, as I said in my other video, but on having to do with both defenses for Week 8. But even if this game should be close one way or the other, it is the Browns defense, and Forte is going to be a good option. And I also would just say, moving forward, if the Jets are favored Forte is going to be a great option. I really would not expect Bilal Powell to cut into Forte snaps too much. It's kind of more of a bit of game flow thing with these two in their snap count. So let's move on here now. I don't really have anything to talk about any of the AFC North teams just because it's pretty straightforward. Nothing really too much to dissect there. The only team in the AFC South I want to mention here is the Houston Texans because Lamar Miller was hurt. He hurt his shoulder against the Denver Broncos on Monday night. Alfred Blue looked a little bit better because the Texans' offensive line actually has looked a little bit better. I thought some of the Texas' running woes over the last couple of years was kind of tied in actually to the bad offensive line, and it has been better this year. Unfortunately, Derek Newton had one of the most horrific injuries I've seen of the year, injuring both knees. That was really horrible. And hopefully he gets back to 100%. And it's a great recovery because that would look really bad, unfortunately. But bring this back to Miller. I think Lamar Miller will continue to be the workhorse guy. Maybe Blue seems a little bit more work to split it up with Miller just for this week until maybe Miller gets back to 100%. As Houston takes on Detroit. But nevertheless, I do believe just big picture moving forward here, Miller will be the main guy, and we can expect a high volume for him. And the last thing I actually want to touch on the Houston Texans running game is Miller has been getting over double-digit fantasy points nearly every single week without scoring touchdowns. And then obviously he had a monster game against the Colts where he did score 2 touchdowns. Lamar Miller's floor is very, very high just because of the volume he gets. And his yards per carry, it's not amazing, but it's better, I think, than most people are making it out to be. And I just think it's because the overall Texans offense hasn't been very good as a whole. And I think the criticism of their rushing game is a little bit it's not as bad as some people are making it out to be. So that is it for the Houston Texans. Moving on to the AFC West, and there's 2 teams I will bring up here. The first one is going to be the Denver Broncos, and this is because C.J. Anderson not looking like he will be back anytime soon. There's a couple conflicting reports, or I don't want to say conflicting. There's a little bit of just uncertainty, we'll say, with this, but it sounds like C.J. Anderson, his injury is significant, but there's hope he'll be returned for the playoffs. So he's going to be out for most, maybe all the DFS season. So what does this mean? Devontae Booker and Kapri Bibbs. Here's the bottom line. Devontae Booker is going to be the main guy. I would be absolutely shocked if Kapri Bibbs cut into Devontae Booker's time. Kapri Bibbs is a guy that has been on and off the Broncos roster a couple of times over the last couple of years. Maybe Bibbs gets a tiny bit of action, but really Booker is going to be the main guy. Booker was a heavy workload guy when he was at Utah. This is for people that don't know about Devontae Booker's past. He's a rookie this year. He's out of Utah. He was a very good running back, and college football has seen so many great running backs over the last couple of years that Booker didn't quite get. I felt like, the spotlight that some other guys, would have gotten. And so even just in the Pac-12 in comparison to guys like Royce Freeman, Christian McCaffrey, players like that. So even in his own league, he was probably slightly overshadowed. But Devontae Booker, he can do it all. He's absolutely worthy of being the workhorse guy. And so you can expect a high volume there for him moving forward. Last team I'll touch on here in the West is the Kansas City Chiefs. Jamal Charles, knee started swelling up again, it sounds like, and he barely saw the field last week against New Orleans. And this is one I've been partially wrong on, and partially just kind of some bad luck here, also a little bit. I haven't been as high on Spencer Ware as some others have, just because I thought there was a lot more evidence that while Spencer Ware had been performing much better from a numbers standpoint in comparison to Charkandrick West in terms of yards per carry and the way Pro Football Focus grades the 2 running backs and things like that. Charkandrick West was still getting a pretty good workload, and so I wasn't as high on Ware just because I wasn't convinced on the snap count for him, and that held true kind of for the first couple of weeks. But now we're seeing more and more Ware phase West out of the equation, and since Jamal Charles is not really getting healthy, and Andy Reid appears to be bringing him back very, very slowly, Ware is now seeing a boatload of the work. So I think for slightly false reasons why people were so high on Ware early on are now now they're right, essentially, if you follow me. So moving forward, though, what does this mean? I would use Spencer Ware if you like the matchup or you like the situation every week until further notice, until Jamal Charles really gets actually like 50% of the snaps. Because right now, I just don't really see a big reason why the Chiefs need to rush Jamal Charles back. It's not like they have a depleted rushing game and a running attack with Spencer Ware there, and Ware provides PPR value there. Spencer Ware is especially good on DraftKings in comparison to FanDuel. So that is my position or my opinion on the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll move on to the NFC East. This one's very quick just because it will probably only apply to Week 8. It has to do with Washington, and that's just because Matt Jones is questionable, probably won't play. I think a lot of people think that Chris Thompson might be the workhorse guy. I've seen that out there actually a few times, which kind of surprises me. According to the report, though, Jay Gruden has said Rob Kelly will take the lead on early downs if Matt Jones sits, but Chris Thompson will likely get the most overall touches and is the perfect fantasy fill-in. That is in Roto-World's opinion, by the way. So in any case, I don't know how the snaps would exactly go down, but I would actually expect it to just be about 50-50. That's probably the way I would look at it. Kelly will probably get a few more rushing attempts, and Thompson will probably touch the ball a few more times just because of the overall passing game that Thompson provides. So that's all I was going to say just for Week 8. That's the way I would look at that situation. Not really too much into either player for this week while Matt Jones is out. Let's move to the North because this is where things are going to get interesting because we have all 4 teams to look at like the AFC East. Let's start with the Bears. I'm just going to say this. Your guess is as good as mine on this one. I have no idea. And guess what? They're playing the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. It is a horrendous matchup. We'll look at snap counts. We'll watch the game and everything like that. We'll take notes. We'll do all that. This just has fade written all over it for pretty much regardless who's going to be the running back. Right now Jeremy Langford's questionable. Jordan Howard, all of a sudden he lost carries to Kadeem Carey. Is he going to get action? Like this was just the Chicago Bears running back situation going into this week is just I don't even want to think about it. I don't like that attitude just that I just said basically because you want to figure out everything exactly. But even if you figured out like one of the running backs is going to get 60% of the workload, they're projected for such a low amount of points on Monday Night Football against the Vikings. I just really I wouldn't mess with it. So this is just the best wait and see what happens. I highly doubt one of these guys is going to be, necessary to play in GPPs, and there are better cash options for cheap running backs anyways. Okay, moving on to the Lions. This is another one that's difficult to figure out, but it sounds like Theo Riddick and Dwayne Washington are going to play. They've both been practicing. So where I think this is going to go, because the Lions all of a sudden have 4 healthy running backs. My guess is Zach Zenner will just be a healthy scratch because I don't think they need 4 running backs to be active for a week. So if I just had to guess, Zenner will be a healthy scratch. Maybe he'll be active, but he just won't play. I think this is going to be a Theo Riddick, Dwayne Washington 50-50 or 60-40 type deal. I really see no reason why it would be any different just because you might say, well, do they want to bring him back easily? Well, they're going to be split. The main thing the Lions do is split time anyway, so their value really shouldn't be that much different now versus a game where they're not coming off an injury. This isn't like they're coming off some major knee injury like Jamal Charles or several knee injuries like Jamal Charles. So maybe Justin Forsett will get a couple carries mixed in there, but I think this is going to be back to where we were with Theo Riddick and Dwayne Washington post Amir Abdullah injury, kind of that 50-50, 60-40 thing where Riddick is particularly good with the PPR formats on DraftKings as well. Moving on to the Packers. This one is another tricky one. So obviously Eddie Lacy on the IR, James Starks is still out. Was preaching Ty Montgomery last week. Hopefully a lot of you guys did that on Thursday night and weren't afraid to do so. Obviously he turned out to be a very good play and somehow didn't have a touchdown after being very close on a couple of chances there. But in any case, here's what we're looking at here. Ty Montgomery, Don Jackson, and Niall Davis. Don Jackson apparently did practice, and he's got a protective glove on for his injury. And Don Jackson's a guy they promoted from the practice squad because they were in an emergency status against the Chicago Bears last week. Don't really see him playing this week, whether he is active or he's not because of the injury, or if he does play, it's going to be very, very limited. I think Niall Davis is going to get some action here that kind of replaces to replace Jackson's workload that he got last week. Niall Davis was a guy that was obviously Green Bay traded for, and they brought him in as because they needed another running back due to the injuries of Starks and Lacey, and because it was such a short week and they brought him in like 48 hours before the Thursday night game. Davis wasn't going to learn the entire playbook. All he did was special teams returns, and I think he got in on like the very last series briefly, only because it was garbage time. I think that's the only time Davis ever saw the field. So I do believe Davis will get more snaps because I think he's a better running back than Don Jackson overall. How does this apply to Ty Montgomery, though? And actually, I should also bring up, how does this apply to Randall Cobb? Because Randall Cobb right now, who is playing some snaps at running back, did very little in Thursday's practice, and he may not play. So this is one we've really got to pay attention to closely for Sunday. Here's going to be my guess. From the backfield perspective, Randall Cobb will not play running back, whether he is active or not. If he plays, I don't know if Mike McCarthy is going to want to put him at running back to avoid getting hurt more or aggravating his injury. I just don't know. I don't think he'd put him in that danger. This is going to be a Ty Montgomery, Niall Davis split backfield, maybe with the tiniest bit of Don Jackson if he's active, but I really just wouldn't even worry about that. I am expecting something anywhere between 50-50 and 70-30, Ty Montgomery getting the majority of carries. I think Montgomery is a very good athlete. I think he's a very good, flex type player. I think he's better at, you could argue he's better at running back than wide receiver. I don't know. You could argue it either way, but I think Montgomery is the superior player. I really do. I think he's extremely talented, and I thought he looked very good against the Bears on Monday nights, or on last Thursday night, excuse me. So I think Montgomery is still very much in play this week. If you're wondering why he's questionable, by the way, if you're getting thrown up by some of these questionable takes, he was just limited with an illness Wednesday and Thursday. This isn't an injury from last week, so should be fine for Sunday. So Montgomery, I would say green light against the Falcons. That's going to be a very high scoring game, and the Packers will be throwing a lot to keep up. A lot of PPR value for Montgomery out of the backfield, in my opinion. So there's my take on Green Bay. Very quickly here with Minnesota. Jerick McKinnon, if he does not play, because he did not practice today on Thursday night, So Matt Asiata and Ronnie Hillman. That's kind of what we're looking at here for Thursday night, or for this, what would it be, Monday night game against Chicago Bears. This is, I'm going to say Asiata gets the majority, probably 60-40, maybe 65-35 in comparison to Hillman. Hillman has been on the roster now for a few weeks, maybe a month now. So it's not like Hillman's completely unfamiliar with the playbook, and this wasn't like an emergency signing that you're just seeing out of nowhere all of a sudden. But at the same time, Asiata has been pretty productive with the Vikings in this backup role and has had to play kind of the lead role in certain situations when Adrian Peterson's missed time. So I am expecting Asiata to get a little bit more of the work than Ronnie Hillman. 60-40, 65-35, something like that. Could you play? Do you want to play Asiata against the Bears Monday night? Maybe. It's not my favorite option in the world, but he's still pretty cheap, and it's the Bears defense, so you never know. And if the Bears turn it over and the Vikings give them great field position, you could have more red zone opportunities with Asiata. So certainly some upside there, but again, not my most ideal play in the world. To the NFC South, these last two are very quick. This is the Atlanta Falcons we're looking at. Tevin Coleman remained sidelined Thursday because of his hamstring injury. Probably not going to play. In situations without Tevin Coleman playing, whether it's this week or situations in the future, I think Devontae Freeman is going to be the workhorse guy. I don't expect Teron Ward or Stephen Ridley to cut much into Freeman and play any kind of a Tevin Coleman role. Freeman, as you guys all remember from last season, was unbelievable when Tevin Coleman was out, and vice versa. Tevin Coleman was amazing when Devonta Freeman was out, but Freeman was really, really good, and there's no reason why that would be any different. The only downfall to this, again, with this being against the Packers have the best rush D in the NFL, so it's a slight, it's not the best situation, but even so, Freeman's kind of a guy like David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, where in this type of situation without Tevin Coleman, that even if they're going up against great rush D, they're going to make up for in the pass catching game, because I bet Freeman is going to see at least 5 or 6 receptions this game, and he'll make up for it a little bit in that regard. But again, not the perfect matchup for the Packers, but just want to point that out there. And then we're moving on to the NFC West. And this was just with Carlos Hyde. That's right. Just want to say, Carlos Hyde, the Niners are on bye. This is just to wrap this up. I think Carlos Hyde will be back, and when he does come back, he will not be slowly worked back in. This is just going to be Carlos Hyde, straightforward. And even if somehow Hyde does not come back the following week, I think what you saw the 49ers do last week with this split backfield of Drone and Mike Davis and all that, I would just expect that moving forward if for whatever reason if Carlos Hyde misses time. But Hyde is on a completely different level in comparison to these guys. So just wanted to clear that one up. So anyways, that's it. Hope you guys stayed up with all this. Ran it there quite a bit and went pretty quickly, so to try and cram this all in. So thanks for watching. You can check us out on Twitch and YouTube by subscribing to our channels. You can check us out on Twitter at DFantasyWinners, and I am at Nicky Skevich on Twitter. So thanks for watching, and good luck.